It's been a while, but I'm coming out of my shell. And I never thought I would fall in love with someone just like you. And nobody here now, I hear you calling out, I hear you calling out for love. Ain't nobody here now, but I hear you calling out, I hear you calling out for love. And I hear you calling.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to tonight's show. Yes, this is I, founder and head bloke at the ThreeBOD Rugby group, back. I'm not meant to be on here anymore. What is going on? Ian Gilbert, one of our white-walking Ulster fans. Hola from Madrid. I hope that you are really, really well, mate. I am waiting for my lead host to come on. He's having a couple of technical problems tonight. It's those pre-season, if you like, jitters for four rounds into the show, but we'll keep going on. Great to be back. Thanks to everybody who has sent me wishes. I was man down again with a little wee bit of COVID. It's an age thing, lads. But anyway, you're welcome to tonight's show. The Leinster Laighin, our monthly roundup of everything that happens to do with Leinster Rugby. And let me just get rid of that from there. And when Dave Toppin, another White Walker, more Ulster fans watching tonight, but you're all welcome from wherever you are. As soon as we have Conor Broomfield back in the studio, we'll join them in. We've got a rake of guests tonight. We've got so much activity going on. As ever, it's all about Leinster Rugby. So everything from the provincial side, women's, inclusive tag, wheelchair, schools, absolutely everything to do with Leinster Rugby once a month on the Leinster Laighin. We are supported and we are supporting, as ever, local businesses and organisations. So Rugby Academy Ireland, in fact, they even had this one straight from work today, straight to here. So there we go. Rugby Academy Ireland, the only independent international academy in Ireland for aspiring young male athletes, male and female athletes. Fantastic things happening, including the great David Campese coming to do a lesson for us, a coaching clinic on Sunday the 20th of November at the Killashee Hotel in Kildare. So Campo's coming to there to do some work for us when he's over for the Ulster Internationals. More details coming soon. We're also coffeedog.ie for the one and only Chef's Blend. There we go, top left, top right hand corner, whichever you're looking at. And our good friend Patrick McEntee, fellow Heartman, who is out in America. Great to see him doing so well. And for all of your financial services, go to pgm.ie. He's a rugby-loving, fun man. He's great. And whether it's for retirement, whether it's business or personal, go to Patrick and have a really good chat with him about your financial requirements that you need in the future. So that's who we're supporting tonight. I am going to... we haven't got Conor in at the moment, but on tonight's show, we will be looking at a whole range of things. I'm just going to get my notes there because this shouldn't have been my slot. But on tonight's show, what have we got for you? So tonight we're looking at the URC roundup. We'll have a cut with our guests. We'll have a quick chat about rounds 1 to 4 and just generally where we think URC is. South African seem to be going well as well. Certain Italian team going well as well, which is always good. We'll be looking at the recent Leinster win away on the road against Ulster. We've got one of our very special Ulstermen, White Walkers in the Viking, is here with us as well tonight. So we'll be having a look at that game there and just doing a little review of what Nigel thought. And we'll be previewing with one half of the Second Row podcast. Absolutely brilliant. Padraig Kelly is back on again. Always a pleasure. To help us preview tomorrow night's game in the InterPro in round 5 when we travel to the Sportsground in what is bound to be a wet and windy Galway on a new pitch, though, firm on the foot. Padraig will tell us all about that. The staff down there do a fab job, and the fans and the host down there are always absolutely superb. So we'll be previewing that as well. What else? Our resident historian and AIA specialist, Gerald Williamson, will be on, casting his eye over the AIL leagues and just telling us who he thinks is going to be the front runners and contenders and why the season, and a little bit about the great Tullow Tank. Former Leinster Islander British national Sean O'Brien has been granted permission to play for Naas in the AIL. I think that's bloody fantastic, and there should be more former players who are doing that as well. So we'll be casting his eye over that as well. Our regular co-host for the Leinster Laighin, Nathan Johns, is prepping to go away to Australia with his. He's a sports journalist, so he's going away. But he did go into the studio today. We asked him to give us a few minutes on his thoughts on the Stuart Lancaster effect. We now know that Stuart is leaving us at the end of the season for us in 92. And so we wanted Nathan is an absolute whiz at analysing things. We wanted a little bit on Nathan's thoughts on the Stuart Lancaster effect. And at some point, we are working on trying to get Stuart onto a show for you. We got some images of the inclusive tag rugby blitzes from both NU Barnhall and Navan Rugby Club as well. We'll couple of minutes on the emerging island tour to SA, and then also good news bit of finish on Damien Brown, the former Connacht, Breve, Oino, Saints, Connacht, Leinster lock, who's just got away through the across the Atlantic, run across the Atlantic. First man, I think, to do it both ways. But before all that, last Friday, in a little tiny village of Creeslock in County Donegal, there was a tragic accident. There's only about 400 in the village, in the community, and tragically stuck when the Applegreen service station, which also serves as the deli and the post office, it is the central hub for everybody. A tragic explosion which cost the lives of 9 of the community, 10 of the community, forgive me, and 8 or so who are injured as well. And our thoughts go out to everybody in the family, the emergency services, the community there. This is 14-year-old Leona Harper, who played for Letterkenny Rugby Club. And we use her as a representative because we are a rugby show, but our thoughts go out. We cannot imagine what it must be like if you've never experienced anything like that. It is not pleasant, and our thoughts go out. So we'll just take a couple of seconds to remember Leona, the rugby community, and all those who lost their lives or were injured in this dreadful tragedy in Creeslock. There we go. On with tonight's show, I'm going to bring our 2 guests straight in because I've got no co-host at the moment. He is our lead man from our sister show up in Ulster, WhiteWalkers Chat and Crack, our Ulster Rugby Roundup show. He is the man himself, the Night King. Please welcome Nigel Quigley.
Hi, Joe. Hi, folks.
How you doing, mate?
Token Ulsterman reporting in.
Oh yeah, we'll give you a thought. We'll be interested to see your thoughts, mate. But always good to great to be back on a show with you again, mate. It's been far too long.
Good to see you, bro.
You are more than welcome. Joining Nigel tonight as a special guest is because we've got obviously we're preview tomorrow of the round 5 InterPro game in the RC versus Connacht. So we have one half of the Second Row podcast, and absolutely. This was a podcast before podcasts even became podcasts. Oshin and Padraig, big Connacht fans, but what they put together and how they analyse is absolutely superb. So if you get a chance, really go and listen to some of the Second Row stuff. Please welcome Padraig Kelly.
Thanks, Joe. Hi, Nigel. How's things?
Hi, Padraig. How's it going, mate? Good to see you.
It's either the Naas living Connacht representative, so it's a.
Guys, you're welcome. We're going to have a sort of a quick canter through now. But before we do, we got a few people on. JD, John Dennison, great man from Francor Events. John, great to see you. Gerald Williamson, your dad will be on shortly, mate. Thank you for sorting all that out. Well, yes. Hi to everybody in the Royal County. Joe Lyons, Joe. Oh, sad face, mate. I hope that you are well. Oh, I'm sure that's for Creeslock. Thank you. Greg of Galway. Yes. Rest in peace to all of those. And Dave Topping, to his fellow co-host.
Yeah.
There we go. We're on. So, lads, it has been an interesting time. Padraig Kelly, start us off. 4 rounds down. What are your overall thoughts? on the URC this season. Did it continue where we left off last season, or has there been anything different for you that you think, you know what, it's just gone up another notch?
Well, we've gone a bit super rugby. There's a lack of defence happening. Lots of scores, matches with high scores, so many tries. And it's just been great to see some really high quality rugby. I think the South Africans' second season in have really added to the competition, and they're worth their spot, and they're really adding to what we're seeing week in, week out.
Do you think they will adapt from last year into the fact that they've got to play? I mean, they haven't started in Europe yet. Do you think they're having a really good push now, or do you think they've just settled in and they're just going to keep going up? And the better they do in the URC in the first number of rounds before Europe starts, because that's only a couple of weeks away.
Yeah, remember, you can't lose anything. You can't win anything in the first start of a couple of games of the season, but you can definitely get yourself out of contention. And then by winning games, no matter what happens now, they've got those points banked. They're there. And if they have a small slump post Christmas or post that first break into Europe, who knows? But they have deep squads, and they'll always have a scrum, and they'll always have a front row and a pack. And if you have those things, you're always thereabouts, and you keep yourself in games. Like Lions were the whipping boys last season, and look how much better they've done this year. Sharks have been putting good performances together without their internationals, and these good performances have been without their internationals. So there's a lot more to come from them, if anything else.
Nigel, you thanks, mate. As ever, Nigel, you surprised so far? It's a great point that probably brings up on the defence. Actually, has it been a little bit of what Leicester Tigers were doing last season and the season before, whereas we're going to go out and play rugby. We don't get how many tries against us as long as we get more than them. Do you think there's an element of that? Because the amount of tries that have been scored, and the Leinster Sharks one, end to end, absolutely superb. But what's your take on it, mate?
Well, some of the games have just gone silly, haven't they? I mean, the Leinster Sharks one was one. I think the Ulster Scarlets one was another. We've seen quite a few, actually, where you've got high-scoring games in both directions. And it has just been a case of the more flamboyant attacking team wins, but not by... They might score a lot of points, but they don't win by a lot of points. So, yeah, defences have been a bit optional in a few games, and I'm sure defence coaches, particularly in the Irish provinces, will want to tighten that up, because Ireland... one of the biggest things in Ireland is it's first up and quick defending, and they don't want the provinces playing that kind of rugby, do they? Because it might spill into the international game. Agree, South Africans. Well, we knew last season the South Africans had improved the league. They won it. So there you go, first time in. So they're going to be a strong challenge again this season. Lions, yeah, been fantastic. 3 away wins on the trot. They probably will suffer the most from European games, because they're probably not quite in depth, the quality of depth that the other 3 have. But we'll see. They'll all suffer for that. We know what that's like. You lose your best players for weeks at a time, and you've got to rely on your squad. But I think the provinces, and South Africans too, if I'm honest, have been really deepening the squads and giving the younger players a good quality game time. Leinster started that. Everybody's doing it now, I think, and you have to, if you want to compete in 2 competitions, because if you go for one, you're not winning the other, and that's the way it used to be. But yeah, it's a bit of to carry on from last season, I think, because we had some fantastic games in the last 8, particularly close games, and they were quite high scoring as well. So I think we've kind of continued from where we left off in a way, to be honest.
Interesting, isn't it, though, that the 2 teams really who have made the best start out of teams that we didn't expect to, the Italian team and the West Line and the West South African team. What's your take on the Italians, Padraig?
I think Benetton have been great, and watching Zebre myself, they just needed a few players in their squad that have won matches before, because they've left wins behind twice this season, and all it took was 1 or 2 people who've actually won games that would get them over the line. But it's great to see the Italians doing well, because like the South Africans have improved, or will improve the league. The Irish provinces, Leinster, Ulster especially, are so high up that the pool system that we have, this provincial area, it gives everyone something to fight for. So if it seems like we're having a 2-tier, 3-tier league, at least we have those trophies, those provincial shields to fall back onto for those internal competitions. So there's continuous rivalries and continuous competition throughout the year.
I think there's even at this early stage, there's one standout issue for me. And when you look at the shields, and you look at the tries for and against, and you look at the differentials, and you look at the results, is Wales. You know, the Italians, the Scots, the South Africans, the Irish, but Wales is imploding. Nigel, where do they go? Because they can't keep going like this, because at the moment it's just for me worse, and I feel sorry for them.
I don't know. A quick word on Zebra. If Zebra could learn to start playing rugby in the first 20 minutes of games, they'll win them, because their ending game's so strong and coming back so strong. But they're losing 17, 20 points in the first 20 minutes of the game, and that's just kill them. The Welsh teams, there's so much going on in Wales, and then there's so much going on in rugby in general. We've heard today or this week about the Wasps going into administration. We've heard rumours that the Premier League may try and invite some Welsh teams over. Some Welsh fans and some Welsh pundits and players are interested in that. I think it's a bad move when a league is starting to lose teams through financial mismanagement. That's probably not the best place to go at this time. But they are starting to bring a lot of youth through, though. I've noticed there's a lot of young players starting to appear this season. It doesn't happen in a season. I think they're probably going to have to suck it up for a season or two yet and get these young players through and play them more regularly. But they definitely seem to have deepened their squads. I mean, we played them. I was at the game last week where they had 9 changes in their team and lost 2 players before the game. Now, yes, they got a right hammering in the end, but there was an awful lot of young players on that side. They've got to get these guys out playing. They've got to get them up to the standard required so that when they do lose players through injury, internationals, etc., they're still in a position to fight for games. And, even last week, that lad who's Morgan, I can't get his surname, their number 8, he stood out in a very heavy defeat. He stood out for them. So these players can put their hands up, even in a poor team. And the more they do that, the more the players come up. I think it'll take a few seasons for the Welsh to get right. I think they will come back. I think it'll take a few seasons. And I don't think it matters which league they're in. It's going to take those few seasons for them to come back and deepen their squads and compete. But on an international level, they will compete. That's the strange thing about them.
Yeah, it is. Always. Yeah, it is. I don't think it's helped Padraig. I don't think it helped really lose Dragons, for example, losing the director of rugby so early on in the season. I mean, that changes like that. I mean, either do it before the season or, give them a chance to take a good run on.
Has he officially been sacked yet? Or has he just being put on gardening leave? Because he's been removed from, he isn't there, but there's been no thing from Dragons or Newport or whatever they're called now with their shield that he's left. And the way he lost the dressing room that early in the season wasn't a great sign. But the Welsh are a conundrum because they have such great individuals. You can see talent in every single team in the country, but for some reason at a club level, they just don't have that spark that the Irish provinces have, or the South African franchises have, or the 2 Scottish teams that have that deep connection to Glasgow and Edinburgh, and even to a degree Benetton and Zebra. They have this kind of base in Parma and Treviso and Treviso. For the way the regions of Wales are set up has caused this issue, and no one's ever and the fact that the pro game in Wales is run by the amateur clubs. There's too many cooks, and not enough cooks and not enough of those cooks actually care about what's going on with the professional teams.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that at all. It is a difficult position to be in. Right, moving on. Thanks for that initial overview, guys. I'm just going to quickly bring in my host for this evening. He's back. Technical problems have been solved. He likes to make an entrance. Please welcome from the 4 Provinces Rugby Supporters Group, Conor Broomfield. Con, how are you?
Gentlemen, how are you? I can only apologise. I've had technical issues across several devices, and I'm finally through. So I'm really sorry. Thanks for joining us tonight, Nigel and Padraig. Great to see you both again.
Thanks,
Joe, Joe, I'm probably sacked after this show, but apologies. So let's enjoy this one. Right?
I think they did this, sort of wrote me back in for a one-off guest slot, and then all disappeared, and then all claimed technical issues, so I'd have to produce it, direct it, and run it over. It's all great crack, and I'm really enjoying it so far. Right, let's see what the comments before we look at the Leinster Ulster game. Couple of points here from Joe Lyons. The initial pushing ability to continue this will be interesting to see once EPC games come along, and obviously with the missing test players that affect the bot teams once they are being played. How they manage the squads are going to be very interesting, especially on 3 fronts here. We wanted to cover a little bit on the emerging Ireland team later. There's an awful lot of politics all still going on, and then great to see the cheaters back in, and how it was all done though, and things like that. So it'll be interesting as the season goes on. And another point from Joe on the point we've just covered on the Welsh clubs. The Welsh clubs, i.e. the Premiership, the Tier 2, are still being run as clubs, and unfortunately the Welsh Rugby Union is such a shambles that the oversight is not there to tighten and get them to where they need to be. It's a shame, as we need strong Welsh teams. We do. I think it helps everything, but I'm sure they will come strong again. So moving on, first thing we're going to review was Ulster versus Leinster. And a narrow win away for Leinster on that one. Nigel Quigley, start us off and tell us what your thoughts were.
Before the game actually kicked off, one of my favourite players of all time, but certainly not one of my favourite pundits, Stephen Ferris, who's in danger of becoming the George Hook of Ulster punditry because he gets that grumpy with the team. He said before the game started, literally minutes before, if this stays dry, Ulster will win it. He says, if this rain comes on heavy, Leinster will win it because, in his opinion, Leinster would handle the wet weather and the tight play much better. And I say I don't always disagree with him. I don't often agree with him, but he got that bang on because Ulster started well, and then the rain came down, and boy, did it come down. And Leinster just played the conditions, done the basics well, and played a nice tight game. Ulster was still trying to play their dry weather game. They were still trying to offload little passes and trying to play fancy rugby in that weather. I don't think I've ever seen Mike Lowry knock on 3 catches in a row in his career, and he did in that game that night. So during that really horrible wet patch, Ulster just didn't do the basics well, and Leinster did them very well. And that's where the game was lost, really, because the last sort of 15, 20 minutes, it dried up a bit again, and Ulster came back into the game because they were able to play their game again. It's a bit disappointing because, this is Ireland, and especially the guys up north. What the hell how can you not play in wet weather? It rains like once a year up here, for God's sake. So I was disappointed in that we executed well on the dry. We just did not do the basics well on the wet. Leinster executed the basics well throughout the 80 minutes. And during that wet period, that's where they got it. I know we had a try disallowed that even Gary Ringrose referred to there and says, we're happy to get that disallowed because some people felt it was knocked on by the Leinster tackler and he fell on it and blah, blah, blah. Listen, 9 times out of 10, they're not given, so nobody can complain about it. And at the end of the day, when you consider how bad Ulster's handling was during the wet period, you can't really complain. I did say, actually, in the Ulster show last week, it would be 1 score either way. I hoped it would go our way, but it didn't. But it was a tight game in the end. Over the 80, it was a tight game. But during that wet period, Leinster were just so much better. They just kept the ball better. They passed it better. They played a much tighter, more power-based game. Ulster still tried to flash it around too much, and the conditions just didn't suit that.
Interesting. Con, what was your take on it? Not a win. Where was it when we lost it? We're liking the flowers, mate. We're feeling the feng shui. Good man.
Well, it was my birthday yesterday, and I am a gardener, so
it took 24 minutes to get that in, mate. Well done. It's so short to be to mention it.
He's only been here 5. He's only been here 5.
Stop. Listen. Leinster versus Ulster. Strange match. It's expected Ulster to come out a lot faster. As you say, the weather played a huge effect. Leinster got on top early, built a score, and played some very good rugby in the conditions. Played with great accuracy and precision, and took their opportunities very, very well. Which was a lot different to a week previously against Zebre, where they looked all over the shop and it looked like a pre-season training match. So you had to be happy with Leinster up to about the 50th minute. Then, as Nigel said, conditions started to dry up, and Ulster started to play a lot more cohesive rugby, and that try that was ruled out for young Mr. Sexton might have been the turning point in the game. It might if that had stood, or if that had been allowed, the results could have been different. Overall, given where Leinster were coming from and the late start to the season for a lot of the players, there was a lot to take from that game. Especially Dan Sheehan is arguably the form player on the island at the moment. He's just outstanding, almost unplayable. Henshaw really impressed as well, and we had a couple of guys back in the pack, like Doris van der Fleer. So overall, it was a pretty solid win, and something to build on as we go forward.
On a general point, what have you thought about Charlie Ingethi's cameo so far?
Yeah, he's improving with every game. Like, he seemed to be struggling in the early match with himself and Osborne seemed to be singing off different hymn sheets, which you'd expect. You know, one guy new at the club, another guy still very young. You know, I've seen some criticism of Jamie Osborne because he's 20 years old. People forget that, you know, this is his third season playing senior rugby. He came in at the tail end of the 2021 season and got a lot more game time last year. He's 20 years old. You know, I saw some today say that an Irish international said he was the best young player he's seen coming through Leinster, which is might be blown it out of proportion, but slightly. But he is a huge talent with huge potential. I don't know his ceiling, because he has all the tools to be a top class international. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. We're talking about Nagati. Improving with every game. Very versatile. Great athlete, good hands. He's going to be a good fit for Leinster, and he's available for every match. So very happy with him. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, Joe Lyons puts another point there. If I'm going to show you that one for me, go. But Jason Jenkins has been a massive addition, and there was people last year, as soon as he was pinged that he was coming to us, there was people going, you know, he's never played a game down there, and he hasn't done this, and people just don't do basic research. They just look at just what a quality player. He was unfortunate that he just didn't get many games when he was with Munster, but he's been a massive addition, Joe says, and given us some of that bulk and balance that we've been missing for the past 3 seasons. His field play is phenomenal and such a workhorse. Here's the thing, lads. Leinster in 10 years have never had a bad buy-in at all. I even had I put something up on a post a few weeks ago there on we were promoting Jimmy Gopperth's kicking school. You know, you look at his record, and somebody come up and said, "Oh, the man that can't kick." So I just savaged this guy for the first time ever.
What?
You know, I don't say telling me that the great Jimmy Gopperth couldn't kick. Now, we're not getting into the whole Matt O'Connor. Oh, look, I'm going downhill. Going downhill quickly. But
the mock years.
Yeah. But we haven't. Leinster have never ever brought in a bad player, and so
Eddie Heineken.
Say again.
Eddie Heineken.
Eddie Heineken.
Do you remember him?
Yeah.
He was about the size of me or you.
Yeah, absolutely. but listen, still did better than me or you though. There we go. Just a quick one going back on Ian Gilbert there. See, the WhiteWalkers are out in force tonight, mate. Yeah, nice movie plants, Conor Broomfield. We like that, Ian. That one deserves it.
Hey, very good.
Ben Teo. Ooh, now there's an interesting one. I was a big Ben Teo fan. I think
Ben Teo was good. Ben was good.
He was very good with us. He just wasn't good when he went elsewhere. Okay, so Nige finishes off. What was the biggest takeaway for you? Was it just like it could have gone either way? Conditions, was that the biggest thing for you overall?
No, well, for Ulster, it was just for me, and it's not to take away from Leinster, because I think the difference was during the wet weather, Leinster did the basics well. They held onto the ball well. They kept the play well. They passed well. Their forwards played as a unit pack, and they didn't. Their game became narrower because of the conditions, but it didn't change their cohesion. Ulster's fell apart a bit. They were still trying to offload and do fancy little passes. They were knocking the ball on. They were losing it. The basic handling was a basics thing. Leinster did the basics very well in the wet. Ulster didn't. And if you don't do the basics well, your whole game can fall apart. I was actually quite pleased. My takeaway is they were able to pull it back, towards the end and come back into the game because they were so poor during that 30, 40 minutes of the bad weather. They actually could have maybe stretched a draw or even a win, as Conor said, had that try been allowed. They did get a losing bonus point and, as importantly, denied Leinster a winning bonus point. So it was a 3-point loss, not a 4 or 5-point loss. So it was not a great night for us. We could have played a lot better for periods of that game. But, you had a very strong Leinster team coming up, and it was never a given we were going to win it. It's those two at full strength always tend to be cracking games, when both are at full strength. I've no doubt the game in the RDS will be the same, to be honest, because both teams travel well now as well, I think. And for Leinster, Jenkins has turned out to be a heck of a signing for them, hasn't he? And some more established sort of second row players in that team could now find themselves benching quite a bit this season if he keeps going the way he's going. But listen, but that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is, and it's good, solid buy-in for me. And I think it's not just the bulk; it's just the all-round athletic ability that he brings, and that's the difference for me. Padraig, did you get to see the game?
I saw bits. It was my major takeaway from that whole game is if there was no Emerging Ireland Tour, Balakoon would have been playing, and that ball would be in the left arm, and it's a try. And there's the difference. That's the small skimping of second layer of player that was taken away from the likes of Ulster that would have had a big impact in a very important league match. And that's come the end of the year, that could have been a 2-2, not a 3-4-1. And who knows what those points could have done. So I think Leinster were the least affected because they had the most internationals able to play for those games. So like Sexton Johnny Sexton playing in Ravenhill, I actually thought there was going to be like bonfires the whole way up the motorway to guide him up there because it's such a rarity. So it's the whole thing of this is what that tour did, and I think Ulster with those one or two players that would have definitely been starting or being on the bench would have had the impact for them, and that's the difference between a win, a loss, and a draw on that match anyway.
Yeah, good man. That's a very, very fair point.
Stop trying to stir the pot, Padraig.
What's that?
Stop trying to stir the pot.
Well,
them Ulster lads don't need any provocation. They've been giving out about the Emerging Ireland Tour for the last 3 weeks.
I'm on your show. I'll behave.
Don't forget, lads. I've got the mute button. Go on, I say something. No, you can't. I've muted you.
It's an interesting one on Balakoon though, because I think Farrell is. I know we're coming on to the Emerging Ireland Tour later, so I won't go too deep into it. But Balakoon, Farrell basically publicly stated some time ago that he had to a lot to work on. He was a great talent, but he had a lot to work on to fit into the Ireland system. So I think he's kind of an outlier as regards the squad selection, in that most of them were younger players being brought with tomorrow in mind. He was very much a player that was being brought in with this November and next season in mind, to get him more for working with the coaches more. So even if he was a loss to Ulster there, I think it could be of huge benefit to his Ireland career.
I agree. I mean, I thought, just quickly have to say, when I first saw the squads, and we'll talk about it later, there were two players stood out to me as odd picks for an emerging Ireland side, and they were Rob Balakoon and Max Deegan. But, I thought, what? But anyway, somebody's put a comment up there about Sexton last game at Ravenhill. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. The one problem that young Sexton's had is they've really held him back. The good thing about it is, for me, was he was not dropped off the squad the next week. He was on the bench.
I think it's old Sexton.
No, this is young Sexton. Old Sexton. Oh, do you mean old Sexton last game? Oh, God, Gregor, do not bet on that, for God's sake. Anytime you speak to Johnny Sexton, he says, I'm in the prime, so don't. You could be coming up with Belfast for a few seasons yet.
We do need to move on, guys, because we have Joe Lyons very quickly, though. Thanks for your points, guys. All brilliant. He's looking forward to Ulster next year. With a front row with Stephen Kitsoff and Ferguson. How are they? That's interesting. Since when is Andy Ferguson going to you?
No, Rory Sullivan. Rory's coming until the end. He's only coming until the end of the season. Then Kitsoff's coming next season. So.
And Kitsoff coming. Where do you find the cops of them? Nigel doing cash and hand jobs. Moving on very quickly from
cash in hand or cash hand.
Yeah. Very good. So tomorrow night, 19:35 at the Sportsground in way out west, Connacht versus Leinster. Padraig Kelly, what are you expecting?
Right. No. So it's going to be a tough game for Connacht. If you looked at the start of the season and you saw the lineup that Connacht had for the first 5 games: Ulster away, Stormers away, Bulls away, Munster at home, Leinster at home, you would have had people saying novenas for Connacht. And we're coming back off 3 poor losses and now a small win against Munster. That should give us a bit of a bump. But there's still things not quite right. Like, our average penalties given away per game is 14, and you can tell in how we're playing. We're doing the right things. We have nice shape, but passes just aren't sticking, and that's going to come. And you can tell things are being tweaked. But it's going to be a tough game. Like, the 2 squads that have been named, it's nice to see from a Connacht perspective. For the first time, we have a small bit of stability in our backline. Like, we've had 6, 7, 8 changes per team for every game of the season. So there's been no consistency. And for the first time this year, our backline outside 10 is the same as the previous game. So at least we're going to have some consistency there. And hopefully they can kind of build on their last performance. I thought Hawkshaw and Ralston played very well in the centres together. And I earmarked the 3 Leinster boys who are starting tomorrow's. They've been really good additions. Hawkshaw has that. For someone his size, he doesn't know how to get tackled. He just keeps on going. His legs keep powering through, and he's been an impressive addition to the squad. Dooley and Murphy are 2 lads I think are starting. I'm being told, prove that point. Prove why you've come down here and prove what you're about. This is your opportunity to go, and for one of a better term, prove yourself. And our big job tomorrow night is to contain Leinster as long as possible. We have started slowly far too often. I was talking about Zeb earlier on. They're giving away 14 points early on in the game. Connacht did the same thing. It's our kind of all or nothing mantra. We're either trying to score these incredible tries off backline moves, or we're going to gift points, which we've done against the Bulls and Stormers, and that's our big issue. We just have to start well. There are areas I think we're going to target Leinster at tomorrow. I think with the fairly young back 3, we're going to there's going to be an aerial bombardment from our trio of out halves of Carty, Hawkshaw, and Fitzgerald. All of them can kick, and John Porch and Mac Hansen are incredible in the air. So I think we're going to put a lot of pressure there. And I think Finlay, after a player of the match performance last week, he's going to really attack Ed Byrne. And Dooley knows Furlong. He's been training against him for years and years and years. So I think we're going to attack the scrum, and Niall Murray and Gavin Thornbury are two very good line-out readers, and that would be a place where I think we're going to go for. We can't let Leinster get that maul going. So we're going to attack, and we're going to go up and get the ball. And I would suggest that we're going to attack the breakdown heavily, and hopefully we've learned when to give the ball up and not go into that double digits penalty territory again, because we can't give Leinster that access to points and territory.
Yeah, good overview, mate. Conor Broomfield. I'm gonna bring on the point about Andy Friend and about time and gameplay and the style of Conor play in a minute. But Conor, happy with the side?
Yeah, I think Leinster's biggest weakness now is on the wing, which the players we have out with Lowe and Larmer out. I think it shows her lack of depth in this area. I know Jimmy O'Brien can play there, and Gary Ringrose did a good job filling in. But as Porrick alluded to, I think Liam Turner could be in for a long evening. He's going to be targeted heavily. He's a centre playing out on the wing, and he's a small guy as well. He's only about 5'9" or 10, I think. And if Connacht do get quality balling on the front foot, I think they'd be kicking a lot of ball to his area. Rob Russell has been looked a bit shaky as well. Rob was a guy that came into the academy late, and this is his second season. I think he was only 20. He was 21 when he came into the academy. So he's not young. Good schools player, under 20s. But he's come in a bit late, and he showed signs of promise. But this is definitely an area I can see Connacht with their multiple kicking options going aiming into this area. Front five. I'm looking at it, and I'm looking there saying Connacht should be James Ryan. Hasn't looked in great form in early season. I know he has that massive third test against New Zealand behind him that brought him right back into form. But early season, he hasn't looked great. Tyga's back, his first match. Ed Sheehan up against Beelum. Connacht might have the edge there. So, but then you go to back row and you just see world class 6, 7, 8. And that is going to be huge for Leinster, and we're going to need them all at their best. Listen, the Sportsground hasn't always been a happy hunting ground for Leinster. Connacht have chinned us there plenty of times in recent years, and I'd expect it to be a one-score game.
Yeah, quite interesting, really. I think when you look at if you look at 1 through 8 for Leinster, that's pretty powerful, really. That's a real strong side. If you look at 1 through 8 for Connacht, some might say that it's lesser, but if you look at Dooley, Beelum, I like Gavin Thornbury. I think he's a very, very good player. Paul Boyle is an exceptional number 8 that I think is overlooked an awful lot. And I like Josh Murphy as a flanker as well. But it's when you go to the backs, okay, we got Ringrose, you got Charlie Ngatai there as well. But when you compare it, I think there's a much stronger Connacht side there. And if Connacht can control and dominate at the breakdown there and use the kicking more effectively, then I think Leinster could be in for a long night. Porrick, you're on the back of a win against Munster. So I think there's a stronger team on paper overall from the Connacht side than I do from the Leinster. Now, styles of play. One of the things I saw the other week was Andy Friend was really animated about the fact of the time in play. Last season, it was around about 36 minutes in physical play. And yet so far this season it's about 32 and a half, 33 minutes. So it's getting less and less. And he is frustrated because he wants to play the more open running style of play for Connacht. How do you get around that?
Well, it's something Connacht did a lot last year. Like, we were setting up lineouts a lot quicker. It's those small things of getting the ball moving yourself. I think we have to, that 5-second use, it's got to be pinged a lot quicker. Teams, I think the water break is not helping. It's letting teams get into that rest, relax, momentum type of thing. And also, I think some things just need to be a bit harsher. If someone's bleeding, don't patch them up on the pitch. That's why we have blood subs. Get them off. Let's get the game going. It's all this type of stuff. If someone's injured, let's get them off the pitch. We have blood subs. We have injury replacements for a reason. Let's keep the game moving. Obviously, all within the realms of safety and not endangering anyone who's like falling on their neck or head or anything like that. But if someone's got a cut above their eye, why wait 2 minutes to patch it up on the field? Step them off, get someone on, and get the game moving again. They can come back on the next break of play.
It's not good. It's not good when less than half of the minutes played is like that, is it? It's not good.
Sorry, Joe, water breaks in Ireland in October.
Yeah,
in Belfast, and there was one stage.
I know last week my lads have a water break. Are you serious?
After they do half, it's absolutely.
They turned around and just opened up their mouths to the sky.
To stop him.
Just look up, open your mouth. Job done.
Ulster can get it because there's only 3 seasons in the year: January, February.
Can I make a quick comment as a neutral on this, Joe?
What's that?
Can I make a quick comment on next week's game as a neutral?
Yes, mate.
Couple of things really surprised me last week. When I saw the two teams last week down at Showgrounds, I expected Connacht to struggle in the scrums. In fact, they dominated the scrums. That surprised me. So if they've got that front row sorted out, that it is more competitive, which it appeared to be last week, and Connacht can compete in the pack, then I think Leinster are in for a hell of a hard game. I think it will be decided not in the front five, because the back row, two good back rows there in Leinster are setting up a very strong back row. But the front five, the set pieces for me are going to be key. Quick ball out to those backs for Connacht, because I think Connacht have got the back line that can attack that back line of Leinster's, and they've got to get it at space and quickly. No mess about. I know you're saying about attacking set piece. I assume you mean their set piece. I think on Connacht's set piece, if you've got open field, you're going out to the backs, get it out quick. I'm looking at the two benches actually, and they've both gone for interesting picks as well. I mean, it's not there's good quality in both those benches, so it's going to be a really, really good game, which I'm probably going to miss because I'll be at the airport.
You will. Right, very quickly, because we need to bring Gerald in. Prediction, Padraig.
If Connacht by 3,
right,
we won't get a bonus point, but we'll give up 1.
Okay, interesting. Con?
Leinster by 3.
Leinster by 3. Nigel, any thoughts?
Not picking. Score either way, though. Up to 7 points either way. Same as I called it last week for Ulster. It's going to be. I don't think there's going to be a big score difference in this.
Good man yourself. No. Right, let's see if we just before we bring Gerald in to have a look. Blues by 7, according to Joe Lyons. There we go.
It's -7.
Listen, let's bring in the man himself, our historian and AIL specialist, Gerald Williamson. Always a pleasure, mate. How are you? We are running way behind. That's because it's my first time I've been running the show for ages, and I just thrown everything out the window. So, Gerald, you're going to talk to us about AIL. But before we do, tell us about this man, Sean O'Brien. Has this surprised you, playing in the AIL?
Well, Joe, good evening, everybody. Sean O'Brien wanted to come back and play with his home club in Tullow. And obviously, with the rules as they are in Leinster, coming out of a senior Premier Rugby and professional rugby in the UK, there's a 2-year moratorium on coming back into junior rugby, so he had no alternative, but he couldn't go back straight away to Tullow, so he's gone to Naas. And Joni Murphy, who a head coach of Naas, knows Sean well, so he's got Sean now for Naas for this season and for next season. The only thing is that I cannot see Sean getting too many games with Naas for the simple reason that he would be tied up with the Leinster setup. He is the contact skills coach in Leinster, and if there was matches on Leinster were playing on a Saturday, and at the same time as an AIL match, there's no way would he be playing for Naas. And likewise, if the Leinster were away, maybe on a Friday night or something like that, out of the country, he wouldn't be back in time. So it's only if there's a home match, if Leinster have a home match on a Friday night, that he would be possibly would be playing for the Naas on the Saturday. But it's a good acquisition for Naas. He will be able to bring in his own skills to the club, and it'll be interesting to see how Naas get on with Sean and see where they go from here from this season.
Yeah, I'm not sure I quite fully understood it, the fact that he couldn't play for Tullow because he'd been professional, blah, 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 and yet he could play for Naas. Anyway, I think it's great to see, and I do think there should be more ex-players encouraged to be involved back into the community again. Padraig was just saying in our private chat there that a whole big crowd turned up last week. They were expecting him to play, apparently.
And he has it's the advantage of playing at Naas. He's halfway home to Tullow.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right, my good friend. We're going to rattle through the divisions. I'll put the images up for you. And I'll tell you what, I'd better put you back in the screen, hadn't I? And I pressed the wrong buttons because I'm looking at 3 different things at once. You can't multitask, man. There we go. Now, here we go. So, Gerald, AIL Division 1. Tell us all about it.
Okay, in Division 1, we've had 2 rounds of games so far, and at the top at the moment is Terry Muir, and in second place are Trinity, Dublin University, both on 10 points, and third is Ballynahinch, and fourth are the champions, Clontarf. Now, they are all on 10 points each, so there's some interesting games to come up now to see who's going to go further ahead. Division 1B, you have Michael Bradley's team, and UCC actually leading the pack. And of course, UCC came down from Division 1A. The best Leinster side is actually in St Mary's College, and they're on third place on 7 points, and in second place is Highfield on 9 points. On 2A, Queen's University are actually leading. They have full points, 10 points from the 2 rounds they played so far. And the Leinster, from the Leinster point of view, the best placed club is actually MU Barnhall on 6 points. On 2B, you have Galway Corinthians on 10 points, and also on 10 points are Greystones from Leinster, and on third place are Belfast Harlequins on 9 points. Division 2C, you have Instonians, who are new into the AIL this season. They have been out of it for 9 or 10 years now, but they're back in after winning the All-Ireland, and they are leading by full 10 points. And Tullamore are the best placed Leinster team on 5 points. On the women's side, it's interesting. They have had 4 rounds of games, and some clubs have actually only played 3 matches, but most of them have played 4. Old Belvedere at the top in first place, and in second place are Railway Union on 15. Old Belvedere have 19 points. Railway Union and Black Rock are on 15 points each. Now, those clubs, they have not played each other yet, so it's interesting to see how they work out. Railway Union, funny enough, they have a Spanish player who scored a hat-trick of tries, and also another Railway Union player, Anne-Marie Murphy-Crowe of the Irish Sevens team, she got a hat-trick of scores. And the other interesting note there is And the Blackrock player, Beebin Parsons, she got 5 tries for Blackrock on her debut against Galwegians there last week or so. So that's basically what most of it have there. The other little thing, in I might think it might be it's a side issue, I suppose. 2 British and Irish Lions caps were presented to Roscrea Rugby Club last month from descendants of the Wallace brothers, who played for the British and Irish Lions in 1903, and the cap number was 98. Cap number 98 and 99, and their descendants presented in a lovely frame of the 2 Lions caps to Roscrea Rugby Club, and that's where they originally came from. And that's a big honour for the club to receive 2 Lions caps. That's what I've always had for you. Sorry. Hello.
Joe's putting up teams again.
Yeah, the obvious mistake I made at the very beginning there was I put the women's Division 1 up because I saw the D1 as opposed to that's the Division 1A men's. So there we go. So I put the women's up when you were talking. So well spotted. I was all over everything tonight. I need to get back into this thing. But Gerald, always a pleasure, mate. I know next month, who have we got in history next month? Who are you looking at?
Club wise, Dundalk.
There we go. We look forward to next month.
For all I can say to you at the moment, it was in existence before the IRFU.
Oh, we look forward to that. Gerald Williamson, always a pleasure. Looking forward to seeing you on the 3rd of December, mate. And
yes, and I shall see you in person.
Absolutely.
In December.
Yeah, it'll be good. All right, mate. Listen, thanks very much.
And Conor.
Indeed, and Jerry, and
look forward to that, Gerald.
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
Take care. Hi, Nigel. Porrick. It's nice to meet you.
Good to see you, mate.
Okay, so I want to stick a quick video on, guys. Co-host Nathan Johns, obviously he's off to Australia at the moment. With his job as a sports journalist covering the Rugby World Cup. But I wanted him to cover a little bit aspect on the Stuart Lancaster effect. Obviously, Lancaster is leaving us for Wrestling 92, but here is Nathan Johns on his views on Stuart Lancaster.
Leinster 6, Wasps 33. That was the scoreline when Leo Cullen's side opened up their Champions Cup campaign on 15th November 2015 at the RDS. Christian Wade, Joe Simpson and Charles Piatow all crossed for Wasps on a day that shook the very core of Leinster rugby. I think everyone realised then, with a new head coach in Leo Cullen, very young squad, a side that had underachieved for a few years. I think people realised that something was terrible was going to happen that season, and Leinster were in a really bad way. I certainly did, and I remember sitting there at the RDS. Of course, this video is to talk about the impact of Stuart Lancaster on Leinster now that he's decided to leave, and that scoreline was from the Champions Cup campaign prior to Lancaster's arrival. If you remember, Leinster ended up going to finish bottom of their pool 5, in that year, 2015-2016. They went on to lose to Bath at the Rec. They got thumped 24-9 away to Toulon. They also lost at the home return leg to Toulon at the Aviva Stadium. They did turn over Bath at the RDS, their one win in that campaign, before being shellacked 51-10 by Wasps away. Now, I'm showing this and bringing up these scorelines because I was asked to talk about the Lancaster effect on Leinster. And look, 2 years after that, Leinster won a title in 2018. They won the Champions Cup away in Bilbao over Racing, the team that Lancaster is now to join. Also, remember the year before Lancaster arrived, that fateful 2015-2016 season, was when Leinster lost to Connacht in the Pro 12 final. So it wasn't all bad for Leinster. They were still getting to the final of their domestic league, perhaps a show that the Pro 12 is not quite up to the standards that the URC is these days, particularly with the South African franchises involved. But you look at that timeline, Stuart Lancaster went in there and he helped turn what was a very young, inexperienced and losing side in Europe into a winning side in 2 years. Now, it's not all down to him. Leo Cullen deserves a lot of credit for saying, look, I might be a little bit out of my depth here as a full-time coach. I need to bring someone in so I can be more of a director of rugby role. And while we don't know the inner workings of the Leinster system, by all accounts, Lancaster looked after attack and defence, and Cullen oversaw the whole project and was an excellent man manager. Lancaster's been here 7 years, or at least he will have been by the time that he has left at the end of this season. And I know a lot of people are probably surprised, like, why would you leave Leinster? Why would you go to Racing? Leinster have more European pedigree than Racing. But you have to remember, 7 years in professional sport for a head coach. Well, not a head coach. Well, in all seriousness, Lancaster probably was the head coach in everything but name. But for a coach to stay at its side in professional sport that long, that's a very long time. How many other coaches do we know who've been in situ for that long? Look at down at Munster. Johan van Graan wasn't there for that long, and people were sick of him for the length of time that he was there and what he achieved. So it's quite clear Lancaster had a significant effect. He brought through a hell of a lot of young players. I mean, if you look at the talent that's gone through Leinster and Ireland since he's been there, you think of James Ryan in his 2018 breakout season. Lancaster had him for 2 years. He's the 2 years from the academy and oversaw his progression to the Leinster side, and then by default the Ireland side. You think of someone like Caelan Doris came through, Andrew Porter, Ronan Kelleher, Dan Sheehan. Gary Ringrose was already in and around the setup, but probably, he became a truly world-class player under Lancaster. And most importantly, I think it's hard to say that in the last 2 years, Johnny Sexton is not playing his best rugby at the minute. He is. And I would be surprised if that's not a coincidence with the fact that Lancaster has been there for so long and the way he wants to play the game. And I think he's had a significant effect on Sexton. In terms of trophies, Leinster have obviously won that one Champions Cup. They would like to have won more. I think one Champions Cup in 7 years for such a high-profile coach. Lancaster probably would admit he would have liked it more. They got close. 2017 semi-final defeat to Clermont. Saracens defeat in the final 2019 rather, and then of course 2022's defeat, I should say, to La Rochelle in the final. So they got close. They also won those 4 Pro 14s. I think they were Pro 14s by that stage in a row. Some of them might have been Pro 12s. I have to double check. So look, he's won 5 trophies in 7 years. Any other club in the world, you think that's a world-class return. I think Leinster fans always have slightly higher expectations, but I don't think anyone can look at Stuart Lancaster and say he hasn't done enough for Leinster's push for trophies. We mentioned he's brought through a hell of a lot of young talent. And I think it's hard to know, apart from when you look at the players that he's brought through and the results on the pitch, it's hard to really quantify someone's success as a coach and using any other metrics. But I think the one thing you can look at is the players and how well they've responded to Lancaster, and how any time that they speak about him in the media, they only speak about him in the most glowing terms. He's a very popular man. We all hear about the Stews days when Tuesdays are just his day. He takes over, he brings them through game situations, and he just works the socks off that early in the week. Now, with the amount of contact training being limited in professional rugby circles these days, I suspect it wasn't as intense, perhaps, as we might think. But by all accounts, those days were legendary in Leinster folklore, and they've become part of the culture and part of the vocabulary of Leinster fans. And I think that's when you actually take a step back to think about that. That is a huge impact that one individual can have. And one individual who, let's be honest, who came from outside the Leinster setup. So to be able to come from outside, not necessarily understand how rugby in Leinster works initially, but to ingratiate yourself so quickly and become so much part of the fabric that you're there for 7 years, and people don't even realize like it's gone like that. The 7 years, it hasn't been it doesn't feel like it's been a long time, which I think is a good sign. And it didn't go stale. At no point did he go stale. He's always shown a willingness to adapt. I think even now in his last year, Leinster have continually been hampered by, it's an easy narrative, and we always say, is it actually this just they lose to big sides with fast line speeds? But it's starting to look like that is the case, because if you look at what Leinster are doing this year, they signed Jason Jenkins, they're bringing Joe McCarthy through, they're adding more bulk to that pack, and then we saw on the Sharks last week, they're dealing with line speeds with attacking kicking, Henshaw, Natai, Sexton. So Lancaster never went stale. Even now in his last year of Leinster, he's adapting. He's changing the attacking game, and it's a testament to him as a coach. Now, like I said, he's been there 7 years. It's a hell of a long time. He probably wants a fresh challenge. By all accounts, the top 14 is thriving. It's probably the best league in the world in terms of the product to watch at the minute. It must be very exciting for a coach to be involved in that. He's going to have a massive budget with Racing. He can probably sign whoever the hell he wants. And also, Racing have invested a lot in his academy, and we all know that part of the allure of going to Leinster was the young players and the school system and the academy system that Leinster had. And Lancaster wanted to mould some young talent, and Racing have got that now. And, you could look at the talent coming through at Leinster at the minute, and, they're excited about the likes of Deeney, Cohan, Milne. They've got some young guys coming through that, by all accounts, will be good players, but are they the same level as who Lancaster had when he brought through initially? Your Ryans, your Dorises, your supporters, etc. So maybe he's thinking he wants a fresh challenge. He wants to go to a different academy setup that maybe has a little bit more in the pipeline. I don't know. We don't know. Maybe these questions will be answered in years later. But whatever about Lancaster's done for Leinster, I think it's also vital to look at what have Leinster done for Lancaster. 2015, when Lancaster left the England job, his reputation was in tatters. He brought in Sam Burgess, a rugby league player in England's World Cup squad, and they got knocked out in the group stages of their own tournament. He was beaten to death in the English press. His reputation was in tatters, and he needed rehabilitating, and Leinster took him on. Now, in the meantime, Stuart Lancaster has been everywhere. He's gone on consultancy with the Atlanta Falcons in the NFL, British cycling, English football. So he's a very intellectual man who likes to learn from other sports. But eventually he came back to rugby, and Leinster gave him an opportunity. And whatever about what he's done for Leinster, results, players he's brought through, would the players that are so good for Ireland and winning series in New Zealand, would they be as good without someone like Lancaster? It's impossible to say, but you have to give him credit because he was the man who was there. But what have Leinster done for Lancaster? Well, they've rehabilitated his reputation. He's now getting one of the best coaching gigs in world rugby at the minute, going to oversee a top 14 club and the money that they have and the infrastructure that they now have. And look, as much as that's come at Leinster's expense, he's been here for 7 years, and all you can do is just wish him well.
Fantastic.
That's a great overview, isn't it? That is a really great overview.
Fantastic.
Lancaster. So, but there was a couple very, very quickly because it was time. There's a couple more things we want to cover. So, I did pose up the question in between. Look at you, man, to multitask there. Any thoughts on who we would want? Joe Lyon says Conor O'Shea. Do you think that if Leo stays, Conor, that someone like Conor O'Shea, somebody at that level, would come again?
Not Conor O'Shea, no. I think I couldn't see that as a good fit. He's been away out of Irish rugby a long time. With Leinster, Nathan hit the nail on the head there. Stuart has been a brilliant fit. He's had his career rehabilitated, and Leinster have had a generation of players come through under his tutelage. He's been absolutely fantastic. I don't think we're going to get a direct replacement for Stuart. I think we're going to have someone. We have a new coach who's working under Stuart now. Goodman was a player with us, and he went back to New Zealand, and now he's back as a senior coach. So depending on how he works out this season, he will take on more responsibility next year, I'd imagine. That's how it'll work. Like when you think about it, it was very hard to have two senior coaches like Leo and Stuart there for so long, with both happy.
Sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at the private chat that's going on with our Conor guest trying to wind everybody up. It's all I don't disagree with that, mate. Actually, I think they might just settle for not settle, but they might just go back to the sort of standard pairing for the system. Nigel Quigley, I tell you, T. Jones, Joe Lyon says, "Stop, you'll get kicked." Yeah, you will. Craig Williamson says that if he doesn't get the New Zealand job, Scott Robertson, quality coach. I'm going to bring your dad back in just for that. Right, very quickly before we move on to any serious points, Gerald Williamson, who would you like to see come in to work with Leinster and with Leo?
That's a tough one. I actually, Craig is thinking there about Scott Robertson, but then I'm looking at Ronan O'Gara, but then I suppose a Munster man wouldn't take on the Leinster job. But I think O'Gara has earned his crust, so he has to come back.
I think the difficulty.
The other thing is, guys, before we discuss this, the other thing is will Leo be there next season? He only signed a 1-year contract extension this year, so we might see a totally new team, and that might be the way forward.
That's very true.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah,
Throwing it out there. He was.
Yeah, well, Leo really hasn't been taking charge of what's happening on the field in the first place. He's actually more as a director of rugby. Upstairs, and he's doing the PR work, so he's not really coaching on the field. So I think they should make his job more official if he was to be director.
Will Leinster have a manager as well, like they're in Easterby, Guy Easterby?
True.
I think he took on a bit more on-field work than a director of rugby traditionally would do.
Yeah, well, actually, Easterby he'd been involved with the Emerging Ireland side out when they were out in South Africa. So I mean, they've done a damn good job out there. So they have.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe Lyons wraps that up. That's spot on. Kind of depends on. Yeah, I personally, that's why I was hoping somebody's going to bring in. I think Leo will go as well. If he doesn't, there'll be one more year. That's all as a transition period coming through. Padraig, 1 minute on what are your thoughts on, because it's such a big, huge club. What do you think would happen at Leinster?
All I'm saying is that Eddie O'Sullivan's down the road, lads.
There we go. I'm moving on I'm moving on.
Has no one ever heard that before?
And he'd have to wear platform shoes, which would make him very stylish in Dublin.
I wouldn't think Buccaneers would give him up without a fight.
Yeah, there we go, Joe.
Watch your back when
Joe Lyons off tonight. Now I tell you, it's absolutely well. But there's a whole rake of people who could come in. Ben Jackman might come in. Eddie O'Sullivan might come in. There's a whole range. And moving on very quickly. In recent times,
great options.
We have seen in recent times. I wanted to throw these up, and thanks to Jerry Sweeney and to Conor for these. In recent times, we've seen more. Both MU Barnhall Rugby Football Club and Navan Rugby Football Club, great leading on inclusive tag rugby, as a whole pile of others are as well. It's grown and grown and grown, and I think it's absolutely fab. But there's our man Conor on the right-hand side, and do we recognise who that good-looking young man next to him is?
Absolutely.
Gregor
Galway himself, it is indeed. So,
the one and only Gregor Galway.
Barnhall inclusive.
That's right.
Yeah, which was great to see. There's one from Navan as well, at two ends of the scale, isn't it? I think it's absolutely brilliant. Another one from
over 200 players. Over 200 players from all over the island attended the Barnhall Blitz that day.
Yeah, I did have another Barnhall Blitz one, and I've lost. I can't find what I've done with it. But the whole thing is, lads, let me just come out of that. Padraig, I never kicked you. The world kicked you out from virtually for saying Eddie O'Sullivan's come back to Leinster. So that was your own fault for that.
Joe Lyons hack.
Yeah. So do you not kick these? Listen, mate, I've just done it, and you can't complain. There we go. No, not at all. Great to see you back, mate. Quality picks there are. Guys, I just wanted 1 quick second on your thoughts on inclusive tag rugby. What does it do for communities? I think it is just a brilliant way. Padraig, is it big over in the West, mate?
I would like to say I know, but I live in Naas now, so I literally have no idea what's going on at the club level in Connacht, really. But the more you see of these initiatives, the more you know that rugby is becoming more of a community game. Along the lines of what the GA is in communities, and having that kind of bed in of where people can go and join and be together, no matter what. And it's kind of the core of what rugby is. It's a game for everyone, literally.
Absolutely. Nigel.
Yeah, can I just say something, Joe? Can I say something? The inclusive rugby is actually growing rapidly. A lot of clubs in Leinster, Eden Derry is one of the latest clubs there to have started up in inclusive rugby, and there's actually quite a few clubs in Connacht now getting involved. I think Craig's and Monavea, And I also Corrib is another club where inclusive rugby is catching on, and it's wonderful to see because inclusive rugby involves the community, and the clubs are the community, and everybody comes in, and it's the best thing that has happened actually in rugby, in club rugby.
I love this. There was loads I got. I love this one especially because it covers the age ranges. And actually, there was a couple of photographs where there was older people. There was people in my era who were still. And I just think it's brilliant, and all playing together and having that. Nigel's quite. It's going quite well up in Ulster, isn't it? It really
Yes, it is. The only thing I'll say about inclusive rugby and all the forms of rugby is there's a great phrase we love using in our sport, and it's rugby family.
Yes.
And we now have rugby.
And as far as inclusive rugby is concerned, age is only a number.
That's right. But, you know, we use this term, Gerald, all the time, rugby family. We are more of a family now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very much so.
Right. 2 minutes. 1 minute. In fact, more than 2 minutes. Emerging Island. Nigel, tell us. Do you think
Great idea.
Useful. What have we taken away from it? Go.
Great idea. Terrible timing, I feel. However, if the 9 players left out in South Africa make a difference to our results over the next 2 weeks, I'll change my mind and say it was a fantastic idea.
Good man. What have you sort of thought of your own players? Because there was a good rate went out there. In fairness,
I think Nathan Doak showed what Nathan Doak is, and we've known that. And he's going to benefit hugely from the international setup and learning the systems. I think I'm thinking of our players. I think Tom Stewart has raised his stocks somewhat, but he's always been seen as an up and comer. I don't think. Front rows, we've learned that our young front rows are young front rows. They were playing against some dangerous front rows, especially against the Cheetahs. Second rows, I thought Cormac had a couple of good items. Obviously, the other lad. I mean, it's brilliant for them all because they're learning from the international coaching setup, the international systems. It's going to hold them in great stead going forward. I thought Rob Bollican played well against the Cheetahs, particularly. I thought Stuart Moore had a good outing in the first game. Probably not so much in the third, but he's a player that's going to come on. He's a very smart player. You watch him. He's a very smart player. But for all of them, the 9 and 10 that we have, Michael McDonald, not that one. Not the Doobie brothers. Young Flannery at out half. We had, the Prendergast. Yes, when Prendergast came on, he was fantastic. Deegan, we sort of know as well, obviously, the same as Bollican. Look, there was a lot of positives in that. Who was the tens? The tens that played Flannery and the Munster lad. I can't think of his name. Crowley.
Jack Crowley.
Jack Crowley was superb. I mean, he really showed himself in those games. Look, great. I think the provinces probably could have done with a few of those players, as Padraig said about particularly the Ulster game, but I'm sure we could apply that to any of the games. However, as I say, we have 9 players out with 3 weeks in South Africa. That might help Ulster in the next 2 weeks because they've been there and playing there. We'll see. A good idea. Not sure about the timing, but I'll judge that after the next 2 weeks.
Conor Broomfield, very quickly, your thoughts on the Emerging Island tour?
Okay. I supported this tour from the start because, in spite of the fact that the timing wasn't brilliant for everyone and it affected the clubs, but for 2 main reasons. One, to get the younger players working closely with the senior Irish coaches at a time when they wouldn't be involved with the senior players. If this tour had taken place in November, they wouldn't have access to this training and these learnings. And secondly, because it's putting Team Ireland before the provinces in the build up to the World Cup. We've criticised the preparations and our lack of depth going into other World Cups and citing these as the reasons why we failed. This time around, I think Andy Farrell and his team are exhausting every avenue to make sure we're as well prepared as possible at this tournament. This is about getting guys into camp, preparing them, learning the systems, etc. So I was a big supporter of it. I really enjoyed the tour, and I think some players came on in leaps and bounds. Thomas Ahern and Crowley were standout players for me. They were exceptional. and a number of other players as well made positive impacts, and I think we'll see a lot of these guys playing in the senior squad in years to come.
Good. I think you're absolutely spot on. Timing was difficult. It's always going to be a timing issue, but I think to get an international cap, to learn what it's like to play at that level, to travel, it just takes them up to another level. And I think that, for me, that really is a good thing. And some have equipped themselves very, very, very well. Padraig Kelly.
I wasn't a fan of it, to be honest. Looking at what I could name the World Cup squad right now, outside injury, and no one who was on that tour will go. And I think it being touted as a World Cup helper, I think it was sold wrong to Ireland and people who are interested in rugby here, and that was my biggest bugbear. Will it help in the future? We'll never know, because development of players is a lottery. There are some good guys there with incredible talent. They showed up and they did themselves proud, but the people we knew were talents going over there are talents still. Like, no one's progressed themselves, and being in that squad creates a conundrum. How do you get into the Ireland squad? Do you need to be in those squads? Can you have a bolter of a season? Could you be Mac Hansen? It created issues more so than anything else for me personally, because what happens now if Jack Carty genuinely becomes the next best 10 over the next 12 months? Like, he's the fourth. There's lots of people at the fourth, but he wasn't on that tour. Like, how does a bolter become a bolter if they're not in those conversations? Has this created a hierarchy in the Irish setup that we'll never be aware of? Those issues are there now. The players that were good, like Scott Penny, like Max Deegan, like Cian Prendergast, they were good before they went. They knew the systems. They're still going to be good next week. They're still
what about Thomas Ahern and Crowley? There was plenty of guys there that impressed.
Thomas Ahern, if Munster had Thomas Ahern, they wouldn't have had their line-out issues. Straight up. He would have been more beneficial to him and to Munster, him playing in Ireland, because if he's not playing Heineken Cup rugby next season, he's not going anywhere anyway.
More beneficial to Munster, not more beneficial to Ahern or to Ireland.
But I would always say that
forward.
Him playing in
and that's a very short term way of looking at it as well, Padraig. Can you not recognise that, like, he'd go on tour, he'd learn from senior coaches, he'd get the experience and come back as a better player? Or do you not think it works like that?
I think it's great for players to play under Paul O'Connell, but and especially the second row for him. But my big issue is these guys should have been in Connacht A teams and Leinster A teams going against South Africans as packs, because that's how they learn. This wasn't what it was meant to be. And if it was what it was meant to be, it would have been fine, because it would have created the proper tier, a second tier of Irish rugby. It's created a fourth tier, and that's what's happened. We have this weird middle ground now. I'm not saying it wasn't good for the players, but if the provinces aren't succeeding, then Ireland doesn't succeed. We can't always have 15 Leinster players plus a few others starting for Ireland. That's because they're the best. No one's completely saying they're not. It's just, if you want this broader scale of talent across the country, then all the provinces have to do well first.
I'm partly with you. I'm flabbergasted that we just don't have a proper A system leagues and that in place in the cups anymore. I think that, and we're not getting that sort of capability. So it was great to see some. I personally think that when you go on a tour like that, I think your level rises. Yes, that you're right, they're always going to be good, and we know what they were like, but I think it rises them up another level. The problem is when you come back, I don't disagree with you. How do they then transpose themselves into international teams? Because
bring back the A internationals and the Six Nations.
Well, there you go. Yeah, that just fits in with what I said about having the A.
Joe.
Sorry, Gerald, 1 minute. The A side's playing more, etc., etc., etc. It is a very difficult system if we don't have the structures in place for them. The World Cup. If none of those get to the World Cup, we're 5 years away from potential of them playing in a World Cup. Any of them that went, if we take that view, and you can't argue with that view, because we think that the mindset of the Irish coaching squad for 2023, the next one is 2027, so we're 5 years away. A lot will happen in those 5 years. A lot of those guys won't even, they just won't be at that level. On that,
We were told it was for 2023. That this was Andy. We're winning the next World Cup. That's what it was about. That's
absolutely. We might find the odd bolter from there, but I think that's better. Gerald, finishes off because we need to go.
A couple of things. First of all, I know the provinces might have lost a little bit because players been away. That's number one. Number two, but these guys who went out there have done it on a tour like this to South Africa. It was a new experience for them.
Yes,
to be with a national team. Also, it was an opportunity for Andy Farrell to see what he had at his disposal for the future. You're looking down the road for the World Cup. Now, there are guys who will be past it by the time the World Cup comes. So he's looking at the next step and being prepared for the next step of what is there so that he knows exactly what players he has available in each province.
Andy wasn't there though, Gerald.
Not Andy. I'm not talking about him. I'm talking Easterby. And Easterby, he'll report back to Andy. He will have his report done along with Paul O'Connell. They'll have the report done of who's they think should be there.
We are 3 minutes away from 90 minutes, which is as long as it's not long as apart from the Christmas special.
Guys, that tour was a huge opportunity for anyone involved. I can't believe it's got so much criticism, to be honest. I'm flabbergasted. We criticise our lack of depth and lack of thinking for the future and building. Then an opportunity comes along like this, and everyone gets all parochial, going, "My team is missing a few players."
I might change the mind.
Pro 16.
We're thinking of a national team. It's a national team. It's an All Ireland team, and that's what we should be looking at the bigger picture, not at the provincial picture in this case.
And that feeds back into the provinces.
We're going to finish with some good news just before we say farewell to everybody. Anybody remember this man?
Hon Brownie.
Absolutely.
Damien Brown, who has swum the Atlantic backward both ways. He's the only man that has swum the Atlantic from east to west and west to east.
Yeah, road. There he is, Damien Brown. Congratulations for I tell you what, I wouldn't have even been able to sit going all that distance on a proper boat, let alone row myself across, let alone anything else. Fair play, Damien Brown, former Connacht, Leinster, Brive, Oino, Saints, and
Alien Trade Finders.
Absolutely great. Somebody trying to call me there. Didn't they know I'm working? Congratulations to Damien. I'm going to try and get him on the show because I think the transition and what he has done, what he's achieved, is absolutely inspiring. Right. So, Joe Lyons has put most things up tonight, including trying to get all our guests kicked out. If it was a total World Cup 23 man, then we should have sent 35-60 ranked players, but didn't. That's it. We are finished. I would like to thank. It's been great. First Leinster Laighin show back since before the summer. First show that I've been on for ages. I'm going to go back now. You're not going to see me again for probably another until the Christmas special. This has been absolutely fantastic. We have covered a whole pile of points here tonight. I'd like to thank Padraig Kelly from the Second Row podcast, our Connacht expert. And good luck tomorrow, mate, but not too much good luck. But I'm one with interest to my extended Westie family over there. To Gerald Williamson, our historian and AIL specialist, mate, thank you as ever. Conor Broomfield, Mike O, so glad you made it on, mate. And we did it. And
just about.
And to our lead man, and the great thing is we didn't all agree when everything was flat, to our main man up in Ulster, the Night King, Nigel Quigley from WhiteWalkers.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
The Leinster Laighin show, part of the ThreeBOD Rugby Group, supporting tonight Rugby Academy Ireland, the only independent international academy in Ireland for aspiring young male and female athletes. Go to rugbyacademyireland.ie. Don't forget, Sunday, the 20th of November, David Campese is coming, and he is running a clinic for us in the morning, which will be great. Coffeedog.ie, where you can, it's Chef's Blend, beans and gram.
Awful product placement.
Dreadful, isn't it? There we go. And for all of your personal or business financial requirements, go to pgm.ie and speak to Patrick McEntee. who's a great rugby man himself, based out of Dublin, who will sit and will give you totally impartial advice. It was very interesting speaking to. So pgm.ie for all of that. And we've got 2 more comments just to finish on. Shameful. Great show, lads. Yeah, absolutely. Great show. Thanks to all to be back. And I'm going to leave it with this. We're not going to have a video tonight. We are going to remember 14-year-old Leona Harper from Letterkenny Rugby Club. And our thoughts go to her, the rugby family, our extended families and communities in the small village of Creeslock in County Donegal. May you all rest in peace until next month. May whatever God you believe keep you safe. Cheers all.